Joe, Serenity, welcome to the show. Tell me right off the bat, just how bad is baby food in the baby food industry?
It's pretty bad. You know, before us, it was all essentially sugar and grains, highly processed fruit purees and grain-based snacks, really low nutrition, really high in inflammation. The average baby food pouch before us had an average of 9 grams of sugar per pouch, which is like 90 grams of sugar for you or me in a single meal. Less than 4% had any amount of fat, even though babies need 30 grams of fat a day, huge amount of fat they need, and almost no meat. Actually said it wrong. 4% had meat. None of it was well sourced, almost none in distribution. So it was all fruits, and less than 1% had fat. So almost no fat, even though babies need 30 grams of fat a day.
Let's unpack that a little bit, because you said a few key words there that I guess the dose makes the poison is a good way to frame it, right? Because fruit, pretty solid food. We're told by the experts that grains are a healthy source of food, and meat, actually, we should be doing less of it, no? So you guys are taking a pretty radical stance on this.
Yeah. I mean, the science is clear. The USDA has released guidelines for babies that agree with us. So everything from the most conservative nutritionists in the USDA to the most progressive folks like you guys all agree that meat and fat are essential first foods for babies, that sugar is inflammatory and not really useful, should be avoided, particularly highly processed sugars. And though fruit by itself isn't a bad food by itself, it's a little imbalanced if you don't have some fat and protein with it, but it's got a lot of fiber. But when you puree it and take off the skin and boil it for hours and put it in a pouch that sits on the shelf, it's basically jam.
So you just said that protein, and even the experts now agree that meat and protein is a really important first food for babies. So why do you think in kind of the cultural zeitgeist we've got this, mythology, I guess you'd call it, that vegetables should be the thing that we're trying to get our kids to eat the most of? Like, it's the best thing to get your kids on first.
It's a really good question. Obviously there's been this demonization of meat in the vegan vegetarian movements. There was a lot of misconceptions about its impact on the planet, its impact on health, driven by the sugar and processed food industry. Post-World War II, they reprocessed all this machinery used for war making to make food and created what we now know as big food, this industrialization of the food system. It's much easier to do that with, chemically derived foods from plants than from animals. Raising animals is, almost has to be done in a more natural way. You can't grow them in a lab. And so the industrialization of our food supply made it convenient to demonize meat and say you should be eating more of these very cheap for us to produce and very easy for us to manipulate genetically and scientifically, that these are somehow more healthy for you. For the medical industry, it looked more like a drug. They're like, oh, this is like a drug. We're turning food into drugs. And whole food ingredients like meat and vegetables and bone broth and liver and egg yolk, they can't control them in the same way that they can control a drug. And so the medical institution and big food really collaborated here to create all this mythology.
I also think that the ranching industry and animal husbandry got out of hand. It is still out of hand in most of the country. But in terms of how you're raising animals, raising them inside in a bunch of pens, not cool, right? Everyone knows that. You could take a kid into a CAFO and they would say this is not okay. So I think that didn't help the meat cause. But I'm really proud that we support regenerative agriculture, where we're raising animals how they should be raised, how nature intends for them to live and be raised. And that makes a big difference.
It makes a massive difference, not just for the nutritional quality of the product, right, but for the health of our soils and our future and the environmental impact. So I couldn't agree more. So now take us back a little bit. How did you come to stumble on this and these beautiful products you've got? Where's the story? Where does it originate? How did you come to become Serenity Kids Foods?
Well, I got my first ear infection when I was 2 weeks old. My mom had been a vegetarian when she was pregnant with me, and probably, not eating a lot of B vitamins and all these kinds of things. So developmentally, I was a little small. I was a sickly child. I had many, many rounds of antibiotics over the first few years of my life, which now we know does a number on your gut. So I had stomach problems starting at a young age. And then when I was a teenager, I got my first car, and I was really excited that I could go to Walgreens and buy my own Tums, which is really sad for a 16-year-old. I struggled with stomach problems the rest of my 20s. And then I got put on a prescription stomach medicine every day for the rest of my life when I was 33. And I was like, this is not cool. I'm not doing this. I don't know what else to do because I can't eat without serious pain. So I called my dad and he's like, you should read that book I gave you last year, the one on the paleo diet. I'm like, he gives me dumb dad books all the time. I didn't know he'd given me that. So I went to my bookshelf and I dug it out. It was Mark Sisson's Primal Blueprint. And then he mailed me Rob Wolf's The Paleo Solution. And I just read the intro, and I had been an anthropology major for a while, and it just made perfect sense. So I changed my diet right away, and I've never been better.
Amazing. Amazing.
I'm autistic. I was not diagnosed as a child, so had a lot of social and physical challenges both. Just this really big energy. I was just really larger than life. They called me ADHD. It wasn't really accurate. Those drugs didn't help. So I think my official diagnosis was obnoxious. I was just obnoxious. And I had a lot of difficult time with friends. And then in middle school, I was annoying this kind of popular girl one day. And she turned around and said, you know what? I'm going to teach you how to be cool. And I said, well, I will do whatever you say. I'm so ready to be cool. Like, tell me. And it worked. I took her advice and her and her friends kind of took me under their wing. And I became part of this group of counterculture cool kids. And I learned the most important lesson of my life, which was that I could take feedback and become better. I wasn't stuck being any certain way. So at age 12 was set on a personal growth track that really has never stopped. So I'm always looking for ways I can be better. And it's really how I learned to integrate autism. Got that diagnosis in college and helped learn more about it then. And a big part of autism is sensitivity to heavy metals, to chemicals, to inflammation, and to gut health. So there's this big relationship between gut health and autism. So I'd been learning about that and been experimenting with diet. And then I met Serenity and fell in love with her and the paleo diet. She introduced me to paleo. And I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense to just go back to the basics. I've always been an optimizer. I want to be my highest potential. So why eat foods that are a waste in my body and at worst a waste, at best, at worst create inflammation. And so switched to paleo and had, enormous benefits from that. Learned about acupuncture and heavy metal testing. It was really high heavy metal toxic, so 90% lead, 99% lead toxic. So I had to do a bunch of chelation and things like that, but it really helped integrate autism with diet. I've always wanted to have kids. And so I actually drew pictures of my future kids when I was 5. And I'd always been looking for a baby mama to have kids with. And Serenity seemed like pretty good catch. So as we got serious and started family planning, we were like, let's have a baby. Yeah,
and we were at actually a paleo conference back in 2016. And I started feeling fuzzy and maternal. And I'm like, let's go find the baby stuff, Joe. And there was nothing.
Yeah.
And I went up to the CEO of the conference and I'm like, hey, Michelle, where's the baby stuff? And she said, I wonder that every year. When is the baby stuff going to show up? And I thought, I guess we'll just have to make our own baby food someday. But Joe had another idea.
We were in entrepreneurial mode. She had been doing a paleo coaching business that was very hard, getting people to pay her
and lonely.
To teach them to eat business. Yeah. I'd created some different youth programs. I've been really passionate about changing the world for kids. So I'd worked in nonprofits and had started a youth nonprofit and also very, very tough business model, very small groups of kids at the time, very hard to, nobody values that in society. So it's hard to make money doing that. So made a lot of mistakes and had read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. It's like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And he creates this model for how to look for a product, which had never occurred to me. We've both been stuck in services. And this is, how you create a product to make more money, have more time, and to have a bigger impact on the world. So I was kind of looking for this niche product community and realized that the lack of paleo baby food was a very big opportunity. And the more we learned about it, discovered it was much bigger than paleo. The baby food aisle was awful.
And I had 12 years in manufacturing for Fortune 500 companies. Joe had an entrepreneurial mindset and was good at selling. I was good at making. And so we started making the first recipes in our kitchen and driving them around town to people we knew who had kids, and they're filling out our surveys. Conveniently, a lot of my health mentors had children in the past couple of years before that. So they were all blogging about what they were feeding their kids. And every single one of them was making a compromise for convenience sake. And I thought, if these are my health mentors,
Yeah,
like
right.
the creme de la creme, how do, then everyone else I know is making compromises for convenience, and how can we support them better?
Yeah, that's such a fascinating perfect storm of all of these things coming together at the right time. And I pulled a few statistics before we got online today. More than 54% of American children are suffering at least one or more chronic issue. 1 in 6 American children have some kind of developmental disability. 1 in 12 have asthma. 1 in 13 have at least one food allergy. 1 in 10 with ADHD. And autoimmune conditions in kids has doubled from 2010 to 2020.
Yeah.
How early does this start? You have in this vision of food and how it impacted your health. Like, how much of this starts, conception, like you said, with your mother being the vegetarian, but then as soon as we're out and we're getting fed this junky food versus what could potentially we do if we got this right from the get-go?
The biggest issue is taste buds. So children don't even have taste buds until they're about 6 months old. So right when those taste buds start to form, you're forming their picture of what tastes okay for the rest of their lives. So during that flavor window, you really want to be introducing a wide variety of different flavors, tastes, textures, herbs, and spices. And that's what was missing from the aisle. And that's what was complete sugar. It was all sugar. So I was raised on a lot of really, sugary, junky foods. And I have a big sweet tooth, and I have to combat that every day. Every single day.
Yeah.
For the rest of my life.
Yeah, we realize those sugary fruit purees are essentially creating sugar addicts at birth.
Wow.
Right. I mean, we've got formulas that are packed full of corn syrup, followed by sugary baby foods. Into every kid's food snack is either an empty carb or a sugar.
Yeah.
I mean, there's almost no kids' foods that have good meat and veggies that taste savory, that introduce these flavors. So it's hard for kids, but it's really hard for parents. I mean, what do they give their kids? That they literally have to make every scrap of food. It just in today's world is impractical, and it leads to compromise after compromise. And then, now the kid's stuck on sugar, and that's a constant battle of how do I get, now the healthy food is the exception rather than the rule. And that's really what we want to change. We want to make junk food be the occasional thing your kid enjoys, but their standard meals and food are nutrient dense.
I love it. And it's based on, I saw something you did that was very clever on your blog where you said you basically made the second healthiest baby food in the world because you're building it off something else. Tell me what that thing is.
Yeah, it was my summer of nerddom, 2016. I read everything I could about infant nutrition because I wasn't a mom yet. And I realized my big aha moment was, this isn't going to be as hard as I thought. This is because nature already has a perfect baby food that we can just model ours after, and that's breast milk, right? So I dragged Joe to the milk bank in Austin. Plug for moms, don't throw your stashes away. You can help keep preemies alive. But I started just really delving into breast milk research and realized that the fat content was just enormous. There's so much fat. And then we did a study pulling all the organic baby food pouch data into this giant, enormous spreadsheet with all the micronutrients and everything. And when I realized the huge gap and discrepancy between what babies really needed and what babies were going to get if their parents went to the baby food aisle and thought that's what they should feed them, then I got mad. I got really mad because those babies don't get to choose what they eat. Their parents do. And if their parents hadn't been sick like me and Joe, hadn't had the courage to step outside the box and go against what our doctors were recommending for us, hadn't had the courage to, try food, hadn't had the dad who had the book, right? Then they would be going to the aisle and thinking, I'm sure Big Food cares all about the health of my baby. And the things that are on the baby food aisle are exactly what my baby needs, which is completely not the case.
I think the key things about breast milk are it's the macronutrients are about half fat and half carbs. So it's fairly high carb. It's lactose, so very digestible carb form for a baby. A huge amount of fat. The other half's about fat. There's some protein in there too. So it's a protein, fat, carb mixture. And I think newsflash, it's an animal product.
Yeah.
I like to call it a free range animal product, hopefully.
It's definitely raw and unpasteurized.
Yes, right. Raw and pasteurized, free range animal product. And so for us, we're going to make a baby food that mimics breast milk. What would that look like, right? And of course, it's nowhere near as good as breast milk. Breast milk is magic. But if we were going to have food to supplement breast milk, what would that be? And that was, we wanted this fat to carb ratio very clear, that should be the same amount of fat to carb so that we're not overly carb heavy like the rest of the aisle. And then adding in the protein in there via really well-sourced animal products. So we've got
Not
meat,
just
veggies.
well-sourced, like the best we
Yeah,
can
the best.
find.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
The best of the best, which was pasture-raised, free, regeneratively farmed.
Wild-caught salmon.
Right. The best oil. We supplement fat with olive oil or avocado oil. We use as fatty of meat as possible to start with. So there's a lot of meat saturated fats. And then if we need to boost the fat, we use the healthy oils. And then the carbs from vegetables are far superior to the carbs from fruit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool that you've basically reverse engineered the perfect product into getting it as close to through your products. But you mentioned that you were surprised to see how much fat it was, and we just talked about the importance of these healthy fats. Talk to me about this very interesting thing that's happening and how they're kind of constructing your more regular formulas, if you will, based on the linoleic acid content, which is a fat we'd call them in our normal diet of like seed oils. So these seed oils are in infant formulas and stuff too, right? And isn't that based on the kind of averages of what's in a mother's breast tissue? And is that's
exactly what it's actually not even what's in her tissue. It's what she eats herself.
Huh.
So we're building out, the formula recipe that's used most widely in the country today was made in the 1960s. And it was based on what women at the time were eating. So that is not a gold standard, in my opinion. That's not optimal, in my opinion. So what we did when we created our formula is we looked at worldwide breast milk studies. Not all of them disclosed the diets of the moms. Some did. We could make inferences around that based on location and time. But really what we did was, the thing I'm most proud of for our toddler formula product is the fats. Mm-hmm. We use 8 different sources. We use a wide variety, like the fatty acid ratios are really, really important. And it makes sense why the big formula is doing what they're doing, but it's just based on really faulty old science and also an extreme lack of creativity on the sourcing department. There are a ton of regulations also, which is why we're a toddler formula, not an infant formula. That's a long, hairy governmental red tape kind of process that we just aren't going to do, at least in that anytime soon. Mm-hmm. So they have a lot of constraints as well, but it's just from a really misguided nutrition, and they just don't get it yet. I like that. We're going to change that. That's what we're doing here, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now talk to me about what's actually in the product. You've mentioned some of the key things, the best sources of meat, these fats. Like, take me through one of the pouches, take me through the actual production and the sourcing, the ratios. Like, what kind of ingredients are we actually talking about in real food here?
Yeah, so I'm holding one of our best sellers. It was our first product we ever launched the day our daughter was born, actually, which was bonkers.
That's cool.
This is our grass-fed beef with kale and sweet potato. It's a 3.5 ounce puree pouch. And we start with the nutrition facts panel. We look at the total fat we're going for, the protein and the carbs we're going for, and the total calorie content. And then we back into that. We always use the best protein source we can find, combined with vegetables. We have considered trying to make an all meat pouch, but the processing won't work the way that it's pressure cooked. The proteins would bind themselves back together and they would no longer be a puree. So we have to use some vegetables in there. So we chose organic sweet potato for this one. It really is nice with the beef itself. And then we add some kale in there. It's a small % of kale, but it really adds some of those compounds for detoxification and some extra vitamins. So the viscosity is important. We still have to make it the right texture. So this is kind of the bare bones formula that we can apply those same ratios to the rest of our products as well.
That's like the most simple pouch. We have more elaborate ones. We have a line of bone broth pouches with herbs and spices. So it's kind of that basis of meat and veggies and healthy oils, plus bone broth, plus some herbs and spices to introduce other flavors. Because as Serenity said, it's very important to introduce those different kinds of spices and flavors as early as possible. And, we have the most widest variety of ingredient options on the aisle. We have over 90 different individual ingredients that you can introduce to your kid just with our
whole
product.
Food ingredients.
They're all whole food ingredients versus the rest of the aisle. If you look at various combinations of apple and mango.
Yeah, right. And these actually taste great. I know we were talking off air that you've got another like subset, a small market of adults that are using these, whether they're athletes or ultra marathoners and stuff, because they taste good because, shocker, it's real food. I'm also fascinated by, obviously, what's in the product is super high quality, but what constitutes its quality is also what's not in it, like some of these other funky things that are found in more of the conventional commercial. So talk to me about some of the other maybe shocking contaminants that can be found in regular baby food, regular baby formulas.
Right after Della was born, so right after we launched, we had a news cycle of heavy metals in baby food, and I was like, "Wait, what?" I hadn't ever heard of this, and I was shocked, disappointed. I mean, mostly furious that our government doesn't care about what goes into baby food products. And I was like, dang, do we have that in ours? How do we figure this out? So we made a key hire very early to hire a director of quality to build our own heavy metals program, because the FDA wasn't going to put any limits on us. And we wanted to have the best we could get, mostly because, I mean, yes, we're in it for the babies, but we were feeding this to our own kid.
Yeah.
You know, I was sure we were going to make our own baby food because it's a little bit better to be fresher, right? But I made it exactly 0 times. So I'm like, all right, if I'm feeding my kid this stuff, I need to figure out how do we keep all this garbage, plasticizers and pesticides, all these contaminants out. So we built our own heavy metals program that was kind of a combination of some California laws, European laws, and we're really proud of it. That was 4 years ago, and we're on the cutting edge of the heavy metals regulation program. We've shown our heavy metals test results to some key people in the industry, and their jaws are on the floor. They're like, wait a second. We have baby food companies all over the place telling us they can't do this. And here you are doing it. And it's the program we built out, the relationships we have with our farmers, the understanding we have of the soil and how we get better quality, free from heavy metals kinds of vegetables, which there's a lot more work to do in that space, which we're tackling this year and beyond. But it has to do with where it comes from. It has to do with the land again, right? And making sure that if we have this sensitive population, why not give them the best of what we have, right? Let's figure out how to get the best for at least the smallest, most vulnerable people we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, we say every bite counts is our motto. And so if every bite's going to count, how do you get the most nutrition and the least toxicity per bite? So our products are tested for over 200 different environmental contaminants by the Clean Label Project. They verify that our products are all best in class. And then and just ingredient wise, obviously no added sugars, no industrial seed oils. We don't ever use grains. We consider them a filler, just a kind of a low nutrition, high inflammation filler that's just not, if you're going to feed a baby, it's not the most nutrition per bite. And then we generally stay away from most allergens. A lot of the allergens are a grain or a legume anyway, things like gluten. We have a wild-caught salmon product, which is technically an allergen for fish, but it's very, very clear. We use a little bit of coconut in our dairy-free smoothies. But otherwise, we're pretty much free from allergens and other high inflammation ingredients.
It's amazing. It's really cool. How has this been received? How has it gone from conception to launching that first product the day your daughter was born to where we're currently at? Is there a growing demand for this? Are parents empowering themselves with this information and taking action? How are you seeing it from the back end?
It was our first tries at selling this product that was double the price were hard.
Yeah.
It was hard to get it into that first retailer, but Providence was on our side. The universe opened up a door when Della was 3 or 4 months old. Joe, you tell the story.
Well, we launched online because we knew that the health obsessed people like us, the paleo community, other people who had health issues, they were already looking for this, and we were filling that niche. So,
and they were an online community.
We already back then. A lot of us bought food online. It was before the COVID online e-com boom, but it was normal to buy online. So we still have a very strong online business, and it was growing very fast online. And a few months after launch, a Whole Foods buyer called my cell phone And we'd never met the guy. We'd never been able to get a Whole Foods meeting, even though we lived down the street from the office. We'd brought them lots of samples and we'd knocked on their door a lot. And he finally called me. I thought it was a prank call. I'm like, what do you mean you're the Whole Foods baby buyer? What? Nick, is that you? Like, prank calling me? And he's like, no, we have a sort of an urgent situation. I have these products that we're supposed to launch that aren't going to launch. And I have this space that needs to launch in February. I need 5 spots in all stores globally. Can you do that? Your products are the best I've seen. I want to launch them. And we were like, how are we going to do that?
Yeah,
yes, right. We'll do it.
We'll do it. We'll say yes and figure it out.
That attitude of we can do it, And so we figured it out. We fast tracked some new products and got them launched. This was November, and by February we're launching in all stores. And really out the gate, we're top sellers. I mean, we doubled the size of the baby food aisle at Whole Foods. Like, we brought people back to the aisle that were no longer shopping there. The higher price point makes it easier for us to generate more revenue per spot for them. So we're highly productive in any store we're in. And now we're the fastest selling baby food in Target. We're fastest selling in Kroger. We're the fastest selling in all of the conventional and natural channels.
Wow.
So the regenerative bison baby food is a top seller at Walmart.
That
just
so
blows
cool.
my mind.
It's mind blowing. And we did our first tests in the conventional markets 2 years ago. And right away, like Joe said, they started performing well. And I think that we have a couple different kinds of consumers, right? We have kind of health trendy, maybe coastal consumers who are looking for cleaner meats, better organic vegetables, things like that. And then the kind of center of the country, people are just looking for meat and things that they eat. How can I feed my kid how I eat? Because there was no chicken on the aisle before us. At Walmart, there was no chicken, So
Gerber jars was the mystery meat and the Gerber jars.
Cat food.
Yeah, it looked like it was pretty gross. So there wasn't none, but it was, like I said, less than 4% and almost no distribution, and they were pretty gross.
Does this give you hope if this has been received so well and parents are choosing to feed the kids this stuff from the off, essentially, that it's setting themselves up for a much healthier future? What is your big why with this? Like, obviously we want to, stand up against big food, big baby food, and big food in general. But does this give you hope? Does this give you passion and motivation to just keep going to new heights? What's coming? What's next? How do you keep spreading this message?
Well, our generation of kids is the first one with a life expectancy shorter than ours.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're here to battle. Like, it is a war, a full-on war, and it's working. I mean, it gives me tingles to think that every day I go into a job that I love with a team of people who all care. Every single one of them, from our employees to our suppliers to our co-mans, like, they're all enrolled in our mission. Maybe not quite as much as me and Joe, but they're all on board and they support us. And it does give me hope that those statistics you read, that we have a chance of fighting those and reducing those, and that it's going to start happening.
Yeah, we want to lead a revolution to overhaul what is seen as nutritious for kids. That we wanted to make it easy for parents to feed their kids the healthiest foods. And most parents really want to feed their kids the healthiest foods.
They do.
It's just so big food has made it so hard. They market these, awful foods to kids. They don't offer any convenient packaged options that are actually taste good, that are nutritious. There's all this misinformation about what is nutritious. Are seed oils? Is meat bad? Is fruit sugar okay? All these different questions. So we feel like the growth of our brand with babies really shows that parents are waking up and that there's a huge demand for this and understanding. We hope that they also start educating themselves. When you're having a kid, you opens your mind to all these new things. You want maybe better for your kid than what you do for yourself. And so we feel like it's a great opportunity for them to learn about regenerative agriculture, for them to learn about the dangers of seed oils, for them to learn about macro balance and how important it is to have fat and protein if you're going to have carbs, and thinking about taste and savory versus sweet, and all these opportunities we feel that we have to educate parents and start their kids off on the right foot. And, our daughter's 5 now, and, some of her favorite foods are like green olives and wild-caught salmon. She'll tell you salmon's better than chocolate.
Wow, look at that.
Right? She loves steak. She drank, liver, pureed liver with bone broth a bunch as a baby, and so still loves bone broth. She'll drink as much bone broth as we'll let her drink.
Amazing.
And so, I feel like that's the kind of kids that we have the chance to raise. And not that she never has treats, that she never has junk food. Of course, she will love sugar like the next kid.
It's addictive.
It's not like it kept her from wanting treats or wanting to eat the birthday cake at the party, but it's like if she has a little birthday cake at the party, we have her eat a hot dog first. Force of nature, regenerative hot dog. Have her eat one of those to balance the carbs, and then that's just the exception. It's like her body can process that out, but her foods day in and day out, both homemade and processed for us, are always a focus on nutrient density and balance.
Nutrient density. We obviously a big fan of organ meats here. How do you factor that into how you're raising your toddler, and how this is kind of the meat pill that gets people into that kind of funnel?
Yeah, we actually are my favorite. I'm always plugging Noble Origins protein powder.
Yeah.
You should have them on the show. They're in Austin.
We've had them on.
You had them on?
That's our Meat Mafia bros.
Meat Mafia, that's right. So we love that. She loves that chocolate protein powder. I put it in everything. I put it in her cereal milk. I put it in her pancakes. We make muffins with it.
Hot chocolate.
Put it in hot chocolate. And so that's got the organ meat. It's got the colostrum. It's got the beef powder. It's no sugar, but tastes good. It's got that really rich cacao, which adds that flavor and also some good fiber. And, so she loves that stuff. And I think that's a good hack of a way to fit that in. We also have that recipe for the liver bone broth on our website that is great for babies. They'll drink it. You can drink it out of a bottle. So it's kind of like a supplement to breast milk or formula.
And I think one of the things that the statistics didn't show, but that is underlying all of them, is that we have a malnutrition problem. We are the wealthiest country in the world and are malnourished.
Yeah.
So how do we figure out how to increase those micronutrients, right? Which is what organ meats are doing. Someday we would love to put organs in our products.
Yeah. It is the most requested product for us.
That's cool.
Is people asking for organ meats. Like
we
every day people are writing us saying, can you get organ meats in there? So, our the retail space is not quite ready for it,
right?
But it will happen. Like in the next several years, we will see some kind of organ meat on the aisle. And then our 10-year vision is that would be normal, that organ meats would be in everything.
Because the thing is, they used to be on the aisle.
Yeah, right.
Right? They're the most nutrient dense options. So there used to be liver and onions on the aisle, lots of bone broths on the aisle, all kinds of stuff in the 40s and 50s. And then we strayed away from the light, and we are bringing that back.
Yeah, and that's interesting. The 40s, 50s seems to be that threshold where if you just look at the health statistics for adults, you see this hockey stick of everything, the obesity, the chronic diseases, which is interesting because you see that hockey stick kick in for kids around like the 80s, and that's the kids of those people. So they start to get sicker, and sick people have sicker kids. And I think, this nutrient density piece is a big part of it. And you said something a few minutes ago, Joe, about these parents now wanting to give their kids better than they had. And I've actually heard you talk, I believe, on a previous podcast about even having vegan parents choose to feed their kids Serenity Baby Foods because they acknowledge that, right? How's that been received, and what's that like with working with some vegans and hearing those stories? That's pretty cool.
So I'm a big environmentalist. I used to sit in trees and lock myself to bulldozers. And at that time in college, veganism was the way. If you were pro-environment, pro-animal rights, you had to be vegan. So I was vegan vegetarian for about 4 years. Worst health years of my life. I mean, it was just I'm an O negative blood type. I'm autistic. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that diet was awful for me. And so I had a lot of emotional challenges. So didn't work for me. And then, so I was really, so I learned a lot about that vegan mindset, that mythology. And of course, the regenerative agriculture movement solves that for anybody who has that environmental or animal rights perspective, even just pasture raised. I mean, if it's animals and, if animals what you're going for, then just supporting local farmers is pretty easy to do. And boycotting the entire industry actually hurts those farmers more. Like if all the health conscious people boycott all meat, who's going to buy the regenerative and local meats?
Right.
Like that's the audience we need. So there's a big problem with that. There's a lot of self-hatred. There's a lot of guilt, Western guilt that we have around how much privileged we are and how impact our culture has on the world. And there's this like kind of Judeo-Christian, I need to self-deprecate to make up for, I need to atone by punishing myself, with withholding, this Puritan of like the sins of the body, right? Whatever my body wants must be bad. This disconnection from the body that's in some spiritual circles. And so there's a lot of that I had to overcome and that we're combating all the time. But there's huge increased awareness and how important meat is for the body, that it is an important health food. There's a huge awareness on how regenerative ag is not only not contributing to the climate change, but is reversing it, is actually the solution. Supporting these farmers is the key. So that's continuing to raise. So there's still some people who, for whatever reason, choose to not eat meat. I would hope that if they're educated, that they could see that their baby, at the very least, really, really needs it, that breast milk is animal product. So we do have vegan, vegetarian parents that say, we understand our baby needs this, and we want to let them choose when they're old enough to choose how they eat, to make this choice for themselves. And for now, we're going to give them all the different foods, and that our products are the solution, because they don't have to cook and make the meat because it's weird for them maybe.
Yeah, right.
And then also it's the best sourcing. So like we can feel good that this meat follows our ethical standards. And then some people who've made that switch, like me, who choose to transition to animal products, also like to use our products because it's pureed, so it's easier to digest. They don't have to chew it, so they can start to adapt their body to the meat without having to like cook it and chew it. And so we've had a variety of vegans, vegetarians tell us that our products were their gateway, their transition.
Yeah, the recovery.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, because I mean, you hit a few really good points there, and sometimes in the the shouting across the aisles with the carnivores versus the vegans, you'll hear pretty extreme statements like, raising your kid vegan is child abuse. It's akin to that. And I know that's a very controversial statement. I'm not necessarily saying that as a truth, but you're pointing to some hard truths here, that there are key things here that children do need to thrive. We've talked about protein, we've talked about animal products, but we've also got to square this circle that, the experts, at least for adults, are saying some of these things aren't good for us, the saturated fat and things like that. What are the actual key minerals, the nutritions, the micronutrients that might be missing in a vegan raised child? What are they actually missing out on?
Well, when you think about iron, that's a big one. Heme iron from beef and bison and other meats is very easy to digest and absorb. When you think about zinc, that's another big mineral. Gosh, I mean, there's a lot that I can't even think about. B vitamins, I think I already said that.
I really worry about fats. I mean, I know that's a
Fats is
macronutrient,
huge,
but it's such limited fat choices on a vegan diet.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just so few, especially those really important saturated fats and fat soluble vitamins. I mean, it's like not only do they need the fat, they need the fat to digest and absorb the rest of their vitamin intake.
That's why we add fat to our vegetable pouches that are like don't have any meat. We add that fat so that those vitamins can be absorbed.
Yeah.
And fat's the building block of the brain, it's the building block of the spine, and their brains and spines are doubling in those early years of life. And so to deny them a really wide variety of fat sources, I think is
when we first started the company, we wanted to be the fat baby food. And we were like, I don't think the world's ready for this yet. Let's be the protein baby food for now. Right. But now we actually call out the fat on the front of our pouches.
Excellent.
And it is a comment that we receive from customers as people start really shedding the low fat movement and understanding that not all fats are created equal.
Bingo.
And there are healthy fats and good fats. Right. And we like to think that we're helping lead that revolution as well.
Yeah. And that hopefully people realize that even some of the healthy fats in our culture that we're raising awareness that they might not be so. The healthy fats come from nature. We say nature doesn't make bad fats, factories do. So your canola oils, your seed oils, I'm guessing we're not going to see any of those in Serenity Kids.
Never.
Yeah. Cancer oils, I call those.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Massive states of inflammation, massively cheap to produce.
It's garbage. It's literal garbage. And they're passing that off as baby food. Like, that is just infuriating.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And formula being the worst, because it's so hard to make a formula without industrial seed oil. I mean, at this point, one of the biggest barriers to us getting infant certified is that we refuse to use industrial seed oils, and they just have not recognized olive oil, for instance, as a safe fat for babies, even though it's been used for thousands of years.
What is that? Is that supply chain? Is it incentives of just pricing? Like, you probably understand it a little bit more as to why it's such a headache to get these things in. Is it just costs? What do you think's going on?
Well, with infant formula, it's regulation. It's the government.
Okay.
So it is a multi-$100,000 multi-year question mark. You could make this big investment, and if you get somebody at the FDA who disagrees with your science, then it's just a loss. So it's a big question mark for us. Like, are we willing to fight that battle, or do we just need to spread the word and talk to empowered parents who are willing to make those choices?
Yeah, the Infant Formula Act of 1980 is what governs formula today, and that was based on science from the 60s and 70s. So it has really not been updated. Europe updates theirs every couple of years, so that's why European formulas are considered more innovative and
they're way better,
a little and better, right? Because they can get certified. So we're really up against this battle, and then that's why we had the formula crisis, was because it's so hard to get infant certified that innovative companies like us can't do it, and so formulas overwhelmingly this monopoly of a couple massive companies, and if one of them cuts a corner and makes a big mistake, we have the whole country infants have no food. So it's a real challenge. And but those recipes are essentially corn syrup and industrial seed oil, and I think it's just because they it's like a drug. They think of formula, it's regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. They regulate it like a drug. And so for a drug, it's like you want to control every little molecule, and the only way to do that is to make it in a lab.
Yeah.
And it's something from nature, like olive oil or beef liver, even though our bodies are highly adapted to process that, they don't think that way. They think, I want to control it like a drug.
Wow. It feels like we're living in the upside down sometimes, right? You mentioned the regulatory agency, the FDA there, and I heard somebody say recently that they're called the Food and Drug Administration because if they dictate the food you need to eat, they will control the drugs you need to take. And it's such a tragedy that that's the case. And I think you're right. You said it's bad, it's toxic, it's borderline, it feels criminal to be giving these children that can't make decisions for themselves. And basically by putting them on the shelves, there's this acknowledgement that they must be safe, right? Because our experts would never harm us or never intentionally harm our children. And there's a lot there, some maybe nefarious intent, but certainly just a willingness to turn a blind eye because it's so profitable, or it's just, this is the way it's always been, so this is the way it's always going to go.
That's how lobbying works. It's really sad.
So what is required? You said like we're going to take a stand. We're going to do this. What's required for you guys to continue doing that as you're growing a team? And it's crazy to think, right? Because when you first have this idea, new levels, new devils. You're up against new things now. How do you keep just pushing this thing forward? What's required from you as a business couple, and what's required as you grow the team? What are you really leaning into from that culture perspective in order to just keep growing and going from strength to strength? Yeah,
we need to reach a lot more parents. And one of the best ways to do that is parents educating other parents, right? Most moms will ask another mom, what did you feed? What should I do? So the more we can spread the word, the more we can get other parents talking about us, helping explain why it's important. Of course, more distribution and having more space in the retailers and more ads and more ways to reach people is gonna help that, because we've got this very tight window. If they feed purees from about 6, those first foods at about 6 months, all the way up until about 18 months before they get enough teeth that they're essentially eating regular food. So it's a very critical development window, very critical palate development window. We've got to get them really early, and it's very tough to do with we're up against the largest food companies in the world. Although their baby foods are owned by the world's largest food corporations. Nestle owns Gerber, Hain Celestial owns Earth's Best. So we've got these massive companies that can really outmarket us and can really dominate the narrative and buy more shelf space in the retailers. And so the more it's grassroots, it's moms telling other moms, it's spreading information, it's podcasts, influencers like you telling the story, helping get the word out there, and just pounding the pavement.
Yeah. I think the story is massive, right? When we tell stories, it's inspiring. When you see one mom saying, I did this, and it gives the other mom permission to do it, and it spreads like that. Very grassroots movement, I agree.
Yeah.
What are some of the coolest stories you've seen? What do you get submitted like that? I'm sure you've had some pretty amazing emails to hear from parents. What are some of the cool stories you've had?
One of the ones I remember was a foster dad. And he said, I got my son when he was 4 months old and he had failure to thrive. He hadn't been putting on weight. And he asked for our baby foods for his Christmas present from his family to feed his new foster son. And he would send us updates and pictures of, no, not any face pictures, but pictures of now the diagnosis is gone. My son is growing out of his clothes. I mean, I've adopted him now, right? Like, we get those stories all the time. With our formula product, a lot of kids would have had failure to thrive, and on regular formula, that's just not working for their inflamed bodies, right? And the parents make the switch and they're like, I couldn't be happier.
Amazing.
I mean, now I know my child is thriving. Like, I can tell, like, I'm looking at them, I'm weighing them, I'm being with them, and they have a completely different attitude and feeling and health.
We had a mom tell us this wild-caught salmon product reversed her kid's autoimmune disorder.
Wow.
That none of the omega-3 supplements that she tried were getting absorbed, and the being able to eat the salmon pouch did it, like fixed her brain. And she was eating multiples a day, and that was her medicine.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It points to, not knocking supplements in any way, shape, or form. And, we sell supplements, but we'd say they're not technically supplements. They're real food, all ground up. But that there's something in that, the wisdom of the whole food form, like the pouch, like the entourage effect of everything that's in it, instead of trying to isolate just the omega-3s, that like eat the fish with the real food. I think it's incredibly, incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And it's really inspiring. Let's say that somebody's listening that kind of missed the boat on this a little bit. Oh man, I knew about this when I was raising my kid or whatever. Maybe they've got a toddler. Do you see people still sneaking this in with toddlers 3, 4, 5, as snacks and pouches? And on top of that, what would you say are some of the fundamental rules building on this wisdom of how to structure a relatively well-rounded diet for a toddler?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have, various flavors of pouches. Our dairy-free smoothies are a little more palatable to an older kid especially if they like fruit pouches. They have a little bit more of that fruit flavor, and they've got grass-fed collagen and coconut milk. So it's kind of a good transition. Some good vegetables in there. Our daughter won't eat much pouches anymore, so we mix the pouch in as other foods. So it's a way to get vegetables or meat, and we mix it into a pancake batter. We mix it into pasta. You can mix it, you can bake with it. So mixing the pouches into things as a way, kind of sneaking it in. I think the noble protein powder is a good example of ways you can mix in foods that they already like and add nutrition.
You can actually break open these capsules of soil and just put it right in chili and food. And
or in a pouch
easy
for a baby, if you could mix in the pouch and squeeze it in. It's just about introduction, like the more you introduce our daughter kind of goes through phases. She'll say, I don't want to eat steak. We just keep giving it to her anyway. And then she eats it, you just keep putting on her plate and just continue to offer. It's very easy to get lazy about, lazy is a kind of a strong word for a parent because no parent's lazy, but it's easy to get kind of lax about just giving them the foods they like because you're desperate for them to eat. So we fall into that trap where she's eating the same couple of foods all day long. So we actually made like a list of all the foods that I know that she'll eat, and then foods that we'd like her to eat more of. And so when we're mixing her plate, we try to do a couple of foods we know she'll eat that she likes, which we call hero foods. And
awesome.
1 or 2 new foods, 1 or 2 foods that are kind of mediocre, and let her choose. Kind of try to take a lot of the pressure away from eating, so that she doesn't feel rebellious against eating what we want her to eat, which is also very hard because we have food issues. Everybody in this culture has some kind of food issue. So all healing our own issues with food, our own fears, our own worries, letting kids have that natural relationship with foods. And we just don't buy junk foods. We just don't have them in the house. There's just no gluten, there's no sugar, there's no industrial seed oils. in the house. So like if she wants a snack, if she wants to eat, that's just the only choice there is. And that really helps us too, because modeling is huge. So we don't eat junk food in front of her. Be like, no, you can't have it. She's going to want to eat what she sees us
She's
eat.
like, wait, what are you guys doing?
Right. So we got to change your own diet. You got to
Yes.
change your own issues with food, and provide healthy foods over and over and over again. Trust them to eat. And we, of course we talk about it. We talk about the need for protein with sugar. We talk about why things are balanced, where things come from.
Oh, she talks about how she doesn't like that rule,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't like the rule that I need to eat protein before sugar. I'm like, I don't love it either.
Yeah.
But it's our body's rule.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the rule forever. So let's find a way to work with it.
Yeah. I had a friend recently and he said this. I was like, that's really good. He's like, I had to learn that the foods I loved didn't love me back. And that some of these rules we might not love, but they, we just we've got to make compromises. Like you said, as a parent, you were reminded me about sometimes it's not about just removing foods, but how do you gamify the process and make it healthier. So my wife makes these amazing chicken nuggets for my son right now, and she finds regeneratively truly raised chicken ground up, and then she does a little egg wash with epic pork rinds that she blitzes up, and then she fries them in a pastured lard.
Need
And
that
these
recipe.
are unbelievable.
Yeah,
like when
sounds
he's
great.
eating those, I'm like, I want to eat that for dinner. I just want like a dozen of those chicken nuggets, please. So there's a way you can do it. And what I'm pointing at here as well is the snacks, because I'm looking at the puffs on the table. Kids are going to want snacks. You said you don't want to completely deprive them. They don't want to be the weird kid that's never allowed anything. But there's a big difference between a rice puff thing that's loaded with arsenic and nonsense versus us then probably popped in a seed oil or something. So like, I think this is really important too, like valuable, healthy, nutrient dense snacks. What's the story with the puffs?
Yeah, we knew after the pouches that, we were buying other people's puffs. And it was painful. I was like, I need a snack for my kid, but I do not want to buy this garbage. So we started down the route, and those puffs almost didn't launch because we couldn't find, it took us a long time to find cassava flour that had heavy metal limits that actually were acceptable, that I was willing to feed my kid. So we knew we wanted a pincer grasp option, right? I mean, there's only so many green peas a kid can eat at that age to practice eating. And we knew we wanted to have that option for people. So we actually launched a bone broth puff that is made with cassava flour, freeze-dried bone broth. It's the flavoring on the outside is not flavoring. It's just broccoli powder, spinach, some onion, some lemon ground up. And one of the things that I really commend our first Whole Foods buyer for, when he tried some of the prototypes, he said, oh, this actually tastes like the name it is on the front. It tastes like the vegetable. It actually tastes like broccoli, and I can taste the spinach inside. And for us, as we're developing products, we really want to make sure we nail that we can nail those tastes so that the kids get, like we said earlier, familiar and comfortable with and used to and starting to like all of those different healthy flavors. But it's a crunchy snack. It dissolves in the mouth. It is, I mean, honestly, it's of course the best one out there, but I think they're really good.
Yeah.
Delightfully addictive. Like,
And
I just want to keep eating.
Kids
Yeah,
can
yeah.
eat these till they're 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
They're
I
not
eat 'em.
necessarily a baby food.
Yeah, Della and I eat them all the time. She eats them. I'm eating them.
Dogs can eat them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they will.
And they will.
It gives you such peace of mind as a parent, though, to know that you can have something like that in the backpack. And instead of, if once you become aware of the seed oil story, for example, and then you end up caving to the pressure and giving your kids something, there's the parent guilt, right? Now to just have more of these options come in, to be able to be like, I can give them the snacky food, I can have the convenience and the health, like, thank you. It's been needed for so long, and I commend you guys for just seeing the gap in the market and running with it, because there's always a lot of what ifs. And someone will do it eventually, and we could have waited, but if not you, who? If not now, when? So it's just really cool to see. It's really inspiring, and I'm bullish on this. I'm behind it. It's amazing. I'm excited to feed my 12-week-old when he starts getting a little bit older, get some of these pouches in there and all of that stuff. So it's really fun. Before I let you go and we do the whole tell everybody where they can keep up and everything, we do have a question that was submitted through our Instagram audience. So we'll have that read by our producer, and then we'll riff on that a little bit, and then we'll close this thing up.
Cool.
Sweet. So this question comes from Instagram at always.eating. If honey is good, why is it bad for babies?
There's a myth that honey, because it's a raw food, has risks from I think it's botulism perspective, some kind of bacteria, and that kids under 1 can't possibly have an immune system that could support that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, where it comes from. Whether it's actually bad for babies, it's probably not,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Same thing with raw milk, same
That's
thing
right.
with sushi, same thing with cured meats. There's all these things that are like, there's this tiniest risk that it has this pathogen, and of course babies' immune systems can't support it. So for us, it's like, you know, if eating whole foods, they're eating good, their immune system's probably pretty strong. The risk of the contaminants so low that the benefit of the
Right.
nutrient dense food and introducing it is so much greater than this small risk. So of course, every parent needs to make that choice for
Yeah.
themselves, and they can decide. But there's so much fear mongering, you know, that really serves the pharmaceutical industry to fear monger, say you should be afraid of all these things, and then you should, you know, buy these treatments and drugs from us to protect yourself, and you should avoid all these foods. And there's so, you know, parenting is like the most intuitive
Yeah.
thing ever. I mean, we are wired to have babies, to raise babies, for baby survivors. The only reason we're here is because we
Yeah.
figured out a way in very harsh conditions to keep babies alive and to have them thrive. So if we can just trust our intuition with our babies, with our own bodies, that's really the key.
Like Della unexpectedly weaned herself at 9 months old. And it was tragic for me. I mean, I cried for days. But then I started feeding her raw goat milk because I knew I wanted all the goodness that comes with the raw product. And it was a risk that we were willing to take. And now we have a very healthy child.
Yeah, it makes so much sense to me. And I'm glad you mentioned the raw milk too, because it's something that we've done in our family, and we trust in the natural goodness of this. And like, we rewind back to the beginning of the conversation where you guys got handed one of the books that changed my life too, The Primal Blueprint by Mark Sisson. And the one takeaway from that was, this just makes sense. And it kind of makes sense to me that foods that are health promoting and come from nature, whilst everything carries risk, essentially everything, but how could honey or something like some well-sourced raw milk be more dangerous than these junky baby food formulas that we're willing to feed our kids?
Exactly.
Yeah, so everybody's got to make their own decisions, but I think we've got a good crowd here of people that are going to be okay with a little bit of honey or a little bit of raw milk. Just choose wisely. Well, thank you guys so much for your wisdom and your insights and what you're doing. I think it sounds cliche, but it's a literal truth that children are the future, right?
Yes.
And we have to do better. We have to. It's there's no room for compromise in that area anymore. We're getting sicker. We're getting worse off. We're getting fatter. We're getting weaker. We're getting more stuck in a victim mindset. And we need people that are willing to say, no, enough of that. So
Yeah.
floor is yours for closing messages, anything that, you know, is coming that you're excited about, or just pointing people in the right direction of where they can go and keep up with you folks.
Yeah. I think having kids is the greatest opportunity for spiritual growth of anything. It's the most
Amen.
disruptive thing in an adult's life, and also the greatest opportunity for growth in ourselves. And approaching our kids moment by moment, as it's super hard. There's lots of challenges, lots of unknowns, there's lots of fears, enormous joy, enormous pleasure, enormous fulfillment. And, you know, food is a key way that we relate to each other, to the natural world, and to our kids. And so, you know, sometimes we can think that we're putting too much effort into it, or too much, or worrying about it too much. But ultimately, it's a very important thing to think about. And we hope that we're making just that a little bit easier. We're making it a little easier for for parents to know what's good, and not have to make it all themselves, not have to compromise for that convenience that is a part of our world, and not have to feel guilty, and reduce some of that parent guilt and shame. We're all wired to be parents. We're all doing a great job. You're doing a great job. So if you're listening to this, you're above and beyond great, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about that. So know that you're doing an awesome job, and that your kids are super resilient. They're going to turn out great, and they're the future. We're gonna change the world. So you can find our products. Our website is myserenitykids.com. You can find everything there. Also, the best discounts are through our subscription program. You can set it and forget it there. We're on Amazon as well. And then at pretty much every major retailer, you can find some various assortment. Whole Foods carries all of our products. So natural food stores have a little bit more of them, but Target, Walmart, Kroger, soon to be Albertsons, Safeway. So
Amazing.
check us out.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I think you're right. Parenting can be hard enough as it is. So the fact that you're making it easier and relieving that from the rigmarole that comes with the ceremony of parenthood is very appreciated from us folks that get to enjoy these products. So thank you so much. Go check them out. Serenity Kid Food. Go feed your family these nutrient-dense foods, and we'll see you on the show next week. Peace out. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.